An exclusive. Our next guest, Eduardo Bitar, is a Venezuelan opposition leader against the Maduro regime. He is someone who's been fighting against socialism and the narco-terrorist takeover of his nation for nearly 2 decades, resulting, he says, in 3 different assassination attempts. And he has a message for the Trump administration since the president sent U.S. forces down to capture Maduro. Mr. Bitar joins us now. Welcome, Mr. Bitar.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
First question's a simple one. You have a message for President Trump as far as what's happening in your homeland, who he's currently dealing with, and who you think he should be dealing with. Can you fill us in on your message to the Trump administration and to all Americans?
The most important thing to understand is that President Trump ended the sector led by Venezuela, managed by the government of the regime of Cuba. What we would call the original Chavismo has remained in power. Since the death of Hugo Chavez in 2012, that is what has happened. The Cuban regime has controlled Venezuela. Now, with Delcy Rodriguez in power and with Diosdado Cabello mainly in power, that is the Chavismo that is leading Venezuela.
So that would explain why it was Cuban security forces protecting the illegitimate president, Mr. Maduro, when our forces captured him. We knew they were connected to Cuba directly. So are you telling my audience then that the interim president is pretty much a puppet for Cuba and will continue doing what Maduro was doing? And so is she just giving what we in the States call lip service to the Trump administration?
Yes, totally. We believe that Venezuela is undergoing a process of transition that President Trump must find a way to eradicate. But for that to really happen, President Trump has to find a real alternative. That alternative is not in the traditional political parties. All the traditional political parties belong to the left of the Socialist International, and the Venezuelan regime belongs to the São Paulo Forum, as if we were talking in the United States about having a Communist Party and a Democratic Party. Venezuela does not have a Republican Party. Movements like ours have been hindered and persecuted in Venezuela. People like me have suffered the worst persecutions. It is not the same as what happens to the sectors or the traditional political parties. They are put in prison for a while and then later turned into candidates in tyranny. I call this whole opposition group the oppo-fiction. We are really trying to have an alternative that aligns correctly with the American government of President Trump. We want President Trump to leave power with a legacy, because if this continues happening in Venezuela, we are talking about Chavismo and the oppo-fiction buying time until Trump leaves power in 2028. If this happens, President Trump would face a setback and Chavismo would return with much more power. We are talking about Venezuela becoming a second Cuba that is extremely dangerous for the region.
Let me ask you about Maria Corina Machado, opposition party leader, got the Nobel Peace Prize, came to Washington, D.C., met with the president, presented it to him. By all accounts, the media here in the United States portray her as opposition to Maduro. You live there, you know her and the party she's involved with. You have a different opinion of her. Could you explain to me why you don't feel she would be a good fit to take over running Venezuela? And is she being truthful and forthright with President Trump on her goals in Venezuela?
Maria Corina Machado has systematically been an accomplice of the coalition that belongs to the Socialist International. Maria Corina Machado is the main voice of the 2030 movement in Venezuela. Her party, for example, was the party that pioneered the LGBT movement in Venezuela. Maria Corina Machado, during her time as a congresswoman, was the one who led the disarmament bill in Venezuela. Now we are talking about Maria Corina Machado practically promoting the removal of the Second Amendment as if we were talking about the United States. Maria Corina Machado has been part of and has participated in the Socialist International. That is something that does not exist in our international history. Maria Corina Machado and Edmundo Gonzalez proposed a unity with Chavismo. We do not agree with that because President Trump really carried out a correct strategy. That is to say, the issue of diplomacy in Venezuela ended. President Trump carried out everything we have been proposing from our movement Rumbo Libertad, a proposal that has been calling for a military operation against the regime for more than 10 years, to provide security to what President Trump is carrying out and to the companies that are really entering Venezuela to invest their capital. There must be an effective transition that provides peace and justice to all the people entering Venezuela. I am convinced that President Trump will have to carry out a second and a third Operation PAC. We at Kame are talking about dealing with traitors, speaking of the opposition, but also about some criminals still in power who have behaved like liars, constantly pushing a narrative in favor of the allies opposed to the United States. We need to remove Venezuela from the alliance for evil. We need to bring Venezuela towards the alliance of good. We have a great plan. We have a great strategy, as we are aligned with what President Trump is doing in Venezuela. We want him to succeed. As we say, there is no such thing as being half pregnant. There is also no such thing as half freedom. Thank you very much.
You said it. Eduardo Batar, Venezuela opposition leader. It's Rumbo Libertad is the organization he is with. He has been fighting for a true free Venezuela for over 2 decades, and he continues to fight, saying he is a conservative leader who agrees with President Trump's mission and thinks that we need to take more folks, the evil ones, out down in Venezuela. I'm sure the president will hear this message. Eduardo, thank you so much for coming on the program. Take care.
Muchas gracias.
Gracias.